Hey guys, Shop Talk Podcast.
I'm a zero pro guy.
I did it, yeah. I ran a marathon.
The only cranks crew?
Am I the town hero? 3 laps of that are just...
What up? This is a Shop Talk Podcast episode 40. Big 4-0.
Yep.
And today we got a special guest in studio, Joey Hallstrom.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer. Been in the industry for a long time. Since 80s, 79.
Yep.
Yeah. That's like my era right there.
The LT Grace.
LT Grace,
Yeah.
But, before we get into it, this episode's brought to you by Dohrn Hay Straw. They're looking for straw acres to bale this upcoming harvest season in the northern Minnesota area, from the Red River Valley to Thief River to Gonvick. They'll pay you per bale in the windrow. Sounds like a pretty good deal, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Question mark? Contact Dylan Dohrn at 507-696-1137 for more information, ! And also Dohrn Trucking for all your step deck / flatbed trucking needs in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Nice. Good job.
Harvest season is fast approaching. Jesse Strag actually listened to the show and contacted Dylan
Cool.
after hearing it.
Yeah, we were surprised that Jesse knows who we are. It's pretty cool.
So, Joey Hallstrom, thanks for coming down here today. We really appreciate it. You brought my current arch rival in the pro class, Jesse Hallstrom, sitting here. So
The kid.
The kid.
Yeah.
No, it's fun to get down here. We're right next door to Pine Lake, and Pine Lake is pretty historic. It's there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
It's always been that early season race, smooth ice. It's the go fast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely is.
So Joey, you did the Carbide podcast about a year ago now, and Spencer did a really good job of going through your career with you. So we're not going to go like in depth on following your career. We're kind of just going to bombard you with questions about the 90s, because I feel like the 90s, like 93 to like 02 were like the golden era of snowmobiles. Would you say?
It was definitely the rebound. Again, myself growing up as a kid, reading snowmobile magazines of the 68, 69, 70. I was just a little shaver. And just dreaming about snowmobiles and looking at all those races. It was the Race and Rally magazine. And Jim Bilkey owned that magazine and went to all the races. And that was the coolest thing ever. And then everything came crashing down in 1981. No snow, warm temps, the economy was terrible. It looked like snowmobiling was done. Really? And it was really a fun time to be a part of Articat, and the regrowth of that company, and snowmobiling came back. And you're absolutely right. By the 90s, snowmobiling was on the rebound. It was growing. Sleds were selling. We had some really good winters. And the racing came back really big. And it was fun. It was a good time. The industry had got sales and come back rebounded very, very nicely, which meant there was more excitement. There was budgets. There was people participating and wanting to go racing.
Yeah, there was money to go around.
Yep.
But you raced in 79 was your first year racing, right?
79, I got the opportunity to run cross country out of a small garage in Thief River Falls for a guy by the name of Harvey Hansen, which was just a phenomenal guy. His background he had helped in mechanic for Chester and Garfield Bowman.
Oh.
Chester went on to become Team Arctic cross country and a points winner. But Harvey bought a sled in 1979, and he liked the fact that I didn't crash and was hard on equipment. And My dad went out and solicited some sponsors, like the local elevator and the feed store and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And ran the Winnipeg to St. Paul 500 races. You had to be 18 back then, and I had just turned 18 on January 16th. And ran Park Rapids, and I finished in, I think, the top 20. And then a week or two later, got to run the Winnipeg race. And absolute highlight of my life to do that. That was a really cool race, when you went from town to town and people standing out watching it and the radio covering it. Yeah, it was, there was nothing like it.
Like we had talked with Bubba about that on like how when they went through Gonvik, they let the school kids out and they were all watching and waving the racers on going through Gonvik.
There was kids out. I mean, I remember as a kid going and watching the race back in like 75 and 76. But then when I got a chance to run it, absolutely. Little town of Lancaster, Minnesota, and Gonvik, and towns like that. There'd be kids standing out there cheering you on, and it was pretty darn neat.
Huh? And that was on a LT Gray.
Yeah, I was a 79 LT Gray cross country. The Polaris was the dominant sled back then. And Arctic wasn't too bad, but they had a better sled, no doubt.
Sure. Is that what you race, Kyle? What LT Gray are you racing?
So ours is just a production model. LT Gray cross country cats had a different skid frame in them and rear coil over shocks and stuff like that. But then I was gonna talk to you about in 1980, the 80 race season. They raced 6,000, but the CCU was switched to a 500. And did they sell detuned kits to make them? Within the horsepower?
Racing was 56 horsepower.
Yeah.
And Arctic didn't have a lot of racers there, but what they did was to bring that horsepower down to the certified level, they would put a restrictor plate on the exhaust side right up against the exhaust manifold.
I see.
Basically choking it down.
Yeah.
Didn't do it on the intake side. Back then NASCAR had restrictor plates that they put under the carburetor.
Yeah.
This was kind of that theory. Polaris was, their 340 was built at 56 horsepower.
Yeah. So, that's one thing we keep an eye out on. So, we've rebuilt tons of LT Grays and stuff like that. And buying all the gaskets and the pistons and stuff, you really got to keep an eye out on the thickness of the gaskets, because some of them will be a detuned version where the head gasket's a lot thicker than the regular factory head gasket is a little bit thinner, higher compression. So.
The problem with the exhaust restrictor, it kind of built a funny harmonic vibration in the engine. And we used to always have to take our recoil off. As soon as we got the machine warmed up, we'd have to take the recoil off, because during a cross-country race, it would rattle the recoil and it would break. Really? And so I can remember one year the Park Rapids Heartland race was on the ice, and it was really close. The Polaris Indies were out, and I think I got fourth by a few seconds. But as I'd come into the gas stop, I would have to open up my hood, and then I'd have to flick my clutch to start it.
Really? And, that low compression.
If you snowmobiles will start pretty easy when they're hot like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen some guys kick their drive clutch with their heel, and they can get it to start.
Yeah.
But those were 340s and that back then, and the 500s. So I don't know if you're going to be doing that to 850s and that now, but that's what we had to do. And
wow.
So is that your machine there?
Yeah, that was the 1980. I had a really good run coming into Thief River. It was Gerard Karpik and I were the only leaf spring sleds that were. I think we had like 20 Polaris Indies around us. And those sleds, our leafers would go pretty fast down the ditch.
Yeah.
But, when the Indy came out, it was like, whoa, they could really go through the rough.
I think that's neighbors knocking on something.
I thought somebody was coming in your garage, Brody.
Yeah. No. Sorry about that.
No.
Pretty cool stuff. Jumping way forward. So like the 2012, when they first come out with the vintage class, I'd seen you built a machine for it, and it was a 79 cross country or whatever it was. But it seemed like there was a ton of older guys that built them things just for the vintage class.
I think there was 35 guys entered that 2011, 2012, around there.
Really?
Brian Nelson was a big advocate of it. So was John Sandberg and Aaron Scheel, and there was a lot of guys. John Carlson and with the John Deere guys. We actually picked up 3 LT Gray cross countries. And
Just for that race.
Just for that race. John documented it really well, showing how Brian was preparing them, getting them ready. And what was unique about it is racing those back in their day, now we knew what the flaws were. And one was the track. It was the track on the Arctic back then was a very stretchy, ballooned out quite a bit. It wasn't a very good track. So we just put a rubber track in from Wall Brothers Racing, an aftermarket track.
Yep.
And, we had Willwood brakes on it because they bolted right onto the drop case, and a few other things. We made sure we put good seat foam in it. Because all these sleds, they've been sitting a long time and the foam kind of deteriorates. But that seat's your suspension. There are shocks in that, but it does not do what the seat can do.
Anybody that doesn't know what an LT Gray is, it's a leaf spring machine with 4 inches of rear suspension and tall seat foam, but they make way too much power for what they're good for. So they way too fast for what the suspension is and what the sled is. So you really got to be careful when you're riding them.
Yeah, that was a really fun race. I mean, there was a lot of, you've seen the John Deeres and the Polaris's, and there was Yamahas and the Cats, and it was pretty cold that day. And, we ran just one leg, which was about 175 miles. It was Thief River out west towards Warren, Minnesota, and back around.
Oh,
So it was a fun race. Took 4 hours. It was a 4-hour race. But we had to go last.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Behind everybody.
And so anybody that races cross country you want to stay out of the trench. Because them 600s, when they went through, they left about 3 to 4 foot moguls for 175 miles. And these sleds aren't designed to go through that. So you really had to drive smart. Kind of call it, you have to ride the berm. If you think you're going to ride right down the middle of the packed trail, or you wouldn't make it 100 miles.
Yeah, you got to find a smooth line.
Yeah. I've done it a couple times on a vintage sled, and it's not the most fun compared to racing the new 600s, but it's fun, but it's definitely a challenge, is what I'd say.
It would have been fun if you could have started right up front on the smooth racetrack. Oh, when 150 sleds go ahead of you, and they all got deep lug, 1.25 lug tracks, which chews a lot of snow up. And here we come with our little 3/4 inch lug tracks and leaf springs at quite a bit slower speed. But that was a remarkable day, and all the vehicles along the highway. I remember after the second gas stop, and we were out by Warren, Minnesota, and there was pickups and Suburbans and people just high-fiving. By then I had got to the front of all the vintage guys, and I just told myself, we got another 60 miles to go. Let's just bring this baby home. And that was a memorable day. That was fun.
That would have been cool. I can't believe there was that many sleds entered that year.
Yeah. Actually, we had 2 classes. We had 50 over and 50 and younger. So if you were in the 50 and over, you could run in the younger class.
Sure.
Which we said, what the heck? We'll double enter.
Yeah. Because you were right around 50 at that time, weren't you?
Yeah, I just turned 50.
Yeah.
You ended up winning that race, right? Yeah, that was
Damn.
Yeah,
that's pretty special. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I remember the EFTA boys up there by Middle River and up that way. So they gave me a hard time. They said, Hollywood, 30 years too late. So, not, but it was a great time.
Huh. Cool. So in between, going back in time now again, in between like 79 and 84, Arcticat went under, out of business. What was it like around Thief River at that time?
It was very somber. It was sad. It was depressing.
Really?
I mean, people were leaving town. A lot of people that had worked at Arctic Enterprises. I really thought, this is it. It's done. Because I had always dreamed I wanted to work at Arcticat and snowmobiles, racing. And then I got a call, 83. I was in Alaska. I'd go up there to work while I was going to college.
Oh.
And so the summers I'd run up there and work. And I got a call from Roger Skyme. And Roger said that they were going to get the company back going. Mm-hmm. And he said, "You come see me when you get back to the lower 48 and you're back going to college." And I was going to be done, graduate in 84. So it kind of worked out. Mm-hmm. So it was exciting to see those 5 guys get the company back going. Mm-hmm. They built 2,000 snowmobiles that first year, LT Grayson Panthers. A handful of dealers stepped up and paid money up front for them.
Oh wow.
They were basically 81 Arcticats with decal changes.
Oh, really?
I remember in 81, Larry Colton went down to it was the Snow Goer magazine, had their first shootout or whatever. And Larry Colton come out of retirement with an 81 LT Gray, went down there, whooped up on everybody with an 81 LT Gray. Then it's kind of crazy that you do that and then shut down the next year and then come back in 84 and it's still a really good machine, still a badass machine. So
because like even when they had went out of business, like 81, I think like Jim Dimmerman, he was still racing ovals at that time. And like I read something that investors were like kind of funded his racing for that next year.
Jimmy was racing for Ted Nielsen out of Illinois, Nielsen Enterprises, which was a big dealer, multi-line.
Oh.
And Ted was very strong in the oval racing. And so they bought some of the old Arctic Snow Pro oval sleds, and they retroed Rotax power plants in them with Polaris clutches. And they redid the body work. And but Jim knew the chassis really well. But you had to basically run a Rotax 340 if you wanted to stay in the game when it came to horsepower. Mm-hmm. And Jim ended up winning the World's Championship, I think, in 84.
Yep. So then in 84, that was when you started back with Artco. Or that's when you started with Arcticat, Artco. Like, how many people were at the factory? Like, how many people were working there at that time, like in 84?
They had 60 people on August 1st of 1983. And so when I came, I did my internship from college in May, and then I went full-time of August of 84. I was 113th hired.
Oh, wow.
So there was about 110, 20 people.
That's crazy.
And, my number stuck like that for, on your badge.
Yeah.
And I worked there 35 and a half years. So.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's a small amount of number to build back a company like Arcticat. That's wild.
Yeah.
That's pretty damn cool.
And a lot of people didn't give Arcticat, they're never going to make it. They're going to go bankrupt again, blah, blah, blah. That never, ever was in the philosophy of the people there. The passion was so strong. That was never brought up. It wasn't even thought of.
Yeah.
We were going to be successful, and we were.
Yeah.
Because you go back to those first 2,000 snowmobiles, which are really 81s.
Yep.
But in the meantime, Roger Skyme and Dennis Solowski and Don Eide and guys like that, and I was just coming in there, and I got to test ride the first LT Gray AFS.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of one thing I wanted to break down is you go from an 84 LT Gray, which is a basically a 78 LT Gray.
Yep.
They're same chassis, everything. And then that next year, you get into AFS, coilover shocks, like what did that first year back, it must have been busy trying to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, it was. And I was fortunate, Roger hired me to work with him and Dennis and the guys up there was just a small group of engineers. And my job was a detailed draftsman, so I got to draw the individual parts.
Oh, really?
Dennis would design them, and then I would make sure that they were drawn on a print so that they could go out and be made or put into a weldment. And, Roger was there overseeing it all. And so it was a small crew. Everything was on big drafting boards. There was no CAD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like them big 4x4 pieces of paper.
Yeah.
All hand drawn.
Yeah, that was my first thought. You said drawing. It's like, oh, well, I picture a screen.
No.
And like a computer screen. It's like, well, no, he's actually hand drawing all this
Everything.
for the parts itself to go.
Yeah.
That's I can't even imagine that. I'm too young to even picture.
So, when the chief engineer would design it, and then like a detailed draftsman would draw it, then the illustrator would have to make a parts book. So he would take all those and make an exploded view drawing.
And that'd be like the schematics that you kind of look at for part numbers.
And that gentleman was Roy Blumker. I worked with Roy in high school. And so, he was one of the reasons kind of why I went off to do drafting and illustrating and that stuff. And Roy was exceptional at it.
Yeah.
And when you can see a guy take all the drawings and make an illustration of a drive clutch or a driven clutch or the skid frame or the front suspension, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You got to be
wild.
creative. You got to see what it's going to look like on paper.
As if you kind of expand it out and just pull it apart in 3D kind of.
Exploded view drawings.
Yeah.
And then you got to keep it all organized. You got to have the right part numbers, and then you got to list it because down the road, a dealer's going to use that to order a part.
It's really crazy to me, 160 people or whatever it was, but all the parts that Articat made, so they made their clutches and, their chassis, the frames, the skid frames, only 160 people making all of that stuff is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, it was a lot of hard work in Northwest Minnesota.
Yeah. Like designing a clutch around it, along with the rest of the snowmobile is crazy to me. Because, like, the team here, that's all they do is design how clutches work and stuff like that. And Articat's doing it along with building a complete machine. So,
Yeah.
So how did you get? How are you kind of the person to start up the 1987 Jeep i500? Where did that come into play?
That was really Ole Tweet was my boss.
Oh, okay.
Ole was the head of marketing at Articat. Phenomenal guy to work for.
Would that be Jeff Tweets?
That would be Jeff Tweet's dad.
Oh, okay.
And Ole was a visionary and smart man. And he came to me because he knew I was talking to C.J. Ramstead about the Winnipeg 500 and kind of we wanted to get it going again. And so C.J. and I put together a newsletter called Friends of the Winnipeg, Friends of the 500. We raised $500 of donations, put it in a bank account at Bank and Thief River, and just off that flyer that he made, there was no pictures. It was just like a little historical and what we were trying to do. And Ole said, "You get that race going. That race will be instrumental in our rebirth, our coming back." So next thing we know, some of the former guys from the Winnipeg to St. Paul Carnival we got in touch with. And we got in touch with another gentleman out of White Bear Lake, Minnesota, by the name of Dick Sands. And he had connections with people in Thunder Bay and Duluth. And next thing we know, we all got together probably in White Bear Lake. And it was decided that we'd get this thing going. Ole actually committed $15,000 to the group.
Oh, really?
And I think they asked Polaris for the same, and probably Skidoo. And Ole just said, we're not going to win this race right out of the gate. But he said, I expect us to win it in 3 years. And he was dead on. Because Kirk won it with the 1990 EXT Special. So it was instrumental for us. It played a big part even after that EXT Special when we started racing ZRs, because that was a really neat story. We had been racing Prowlers, and we flopped on our face there. And then when we came with the ZR, boy, we went on a run. We went on a tear.
Yeah. So jumped ahead a little bit there. But in '87, you raced in that first GPI 500.
I wanted to make sure that I still had a passion, wanted to run it. And boy, I think there was 300 sleds in Thunder Bay.
Really?
Wow.
And the plan was to leave Thunder Bay Eastern Standard Time at 8:00 in the morning, and we wanted to race all the way 365 miles to Duluth.
Jeez.
And it was miscalculated. It took way longer than everybody thought. And they stopped everybody but 4 guys at Two Harbors, Minnesota. 4 guys that had to run it all the way, but they cut everybody's time off at Two Harbors. And I remember pulling in there, and, it gets dark then by 5:00, and she was dusk. It was starting. So...
How was it running like along the coastline there? Because that's a really rocky area. Like, was there snow that year, or was it like?
There was. That year there was pretty good snow. There were some years of the Thunder Bay race that there was hardly any snow, and then there are other years it was super deep.
Yeah.
But when you left Thunder Bay, you went on a pretty large river, and it just kept, as you were going south out of Thunder Bay and working your way down. They took you right to just some nasty rock. It's narrow. It was called the Slate River.
Yep.
And, the ice was all jagged and broken out. And then that went for a long ways. And then you got into the forest and towards the border, and you were right through the pine trees. And you really never got onto any trails till you got closer to Grand Marais. So it was a slow, tedious, challenging event through there. And then when you shove 300 1987 snowmobiles through there.
Oh, gosh.
I've seen the videos of coming out of the woods right at the border, and we weren't going very fast. But then you got on the North Shore Trail, which was really fun.
Yeah, that's that. I always wonder that, because like to go through Duluth, you look at Duluth, and it's just built on one big rock.
Rocks. Yeah.
It's that way all the way up.
Yeah. But then, so you raced in '87, but then that was kind of your last race, though, actually.
That was.
Because then you got moved into the race director position.
Yep. I was actually asked to be race director even when I ran that. And then it was, you really had to concentrate on being the coach of the hockey team. And, you work really closely with engineering. At least I did. That was my role. And work with engineers like Kevin Thompson and people like that to develop and build the next sled. Plus work with the racers, work with the race associations. And, things were starting to pick up pretty good then, 88. 89. Of course, then in 1990, we built the 90 EXT Special because we had been kind of embarrassed in 89. In fact, Polaris took out an ad that said, "Dear Kirk and Doug Lamb and Kirk Hibbert, Articat and Yamaha must be very proud of you that you finished in the top 20 with all these Polarises."
Wow.
We took that ad, which ran in the Star Tribune as a full-page ad, and we put it up on every door in our factory. And that was our inspiration for 1 year to build the EXT Special, and to win that 500 that Ole wanted to win. And then Kirk pulled off just a dramatic. He was 25 minutes out of the lead in Grand Marais.
Wow.
And he won by over, I think, 2.5, 3 minutes when we got to Duluth. He was a half hour out of the lead.
Yeah.
Huh.
But,
Damn.
he went through that woods so fast. Kirk said he goes, I never looked at a bump. I just concentrated on the trail, whether it went left or right or whatever. And he plain motored.
Yeah. So you were you got that position at 27 years old, where I suppose like when I'm thinking of it, like, geez, I'm 28 right now, so it's very similar age to me. It wasn't as big of a program, but like, were you nervous taking that on at that young? Like,
yeah. Wasn't a very big budget. Very, very nervous. But I had good coaches. Davey Thompson was phenomenal. And he had been Arctic's racer and team manager for the Snow Pro era. And he was just great at coaching me. And, my guys like Dennis Olowski and Roger Skyme and Don Eide and Larry Colton down in the shop, stuff like that. I had some good mentors, really good.
Sure.
And, they directed me which way to go and what to do and what not to do. And we got the ball rolling pretty darn good.
Because then in 1990, that EXT, it was you and Kirk that actually helped get the Fox shocks on there as well?
Yeah. Kirk had been putting Fox shocks on out in Idaho, and Kirk and I grabbed Kirk. We flew out to San Jose, California, to the Fox's home base there. They didn't know a lot about snowmobiles. We had to bring a brochure. We had to tell them about it.
Wow.
They said, well, if you want to buy the shocks, that they're going to cost you this much, which was kind of a sticker shock.
Like how much would that have been back in the late 80s?
I think back then, regular shocks were probably $20 a piece. These shocks were about 90.
Oh, really?
So and we had to get 4 of them.
Yeah.
And they were gas charged, so they were totally new to how you had to work on them. But the shocks that had been on snowmobiles, I called just door stopper shocks. They weren't very good.
Yep.
And these shocks, Kirk proved how they worked. And we needed it. We knew it would win. I took Roger out in April of '89, and he rode the prototype. And Roger gave his blessing, and he said on the trail, we're going to win the I-500 next year. And he was right.
He called it.
He called it.
Just from riding.
And Ole called it too. He said, we're going to invest. We're going to make sure that race is there. So pretty good insight from those guys.
Yeah, seeing the bigger picture and the long run instead of the battle right in front of you.
Yeah.
Well, so I believe Brian Nelson won Pine Lake on that 90 EXT Special, right?
That 90 EXT Special went on a tear. Brian won Pine Lake because we knew it handled good. We knew it was fast. That was pretty exciting for us. And then we started winning oval races left and right. Gerald Dyrdahl, Brian Sturgeon. Brian wins Eagle River with it. Kirk wins the dramatic Thunder Bay Jeep race with it. I don't think we lost a race with that sled.
Really?
It was good.
So
The catalyst was from that one ad that Polaris put in the paper, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was
If
the
only they
driver.
knew what they were creating when they put that out there.
It was a durable piece, handled good. It was fast. Those shocks made it phenomenal. But we just took our regular AFS Tigre and we actually put on chromoly A-arms that TNS Racing out of Fergus Falls had built on the oval sleds.
Yeah.
They were lighter, they were stronger, they were lower. We didn't have hydraulic brakes on it, but everything else was so good that we didn't need it, and we didn't have it then.
Sure.
The hydraulic brakes didn't come till the 93 ZR.
Mm-hmm.
So in between that, 91, 92, you built the Prowler, and the Prowler, by a lot of people, was not a good sled. Like, why that dramatic of a change from the EXT to the Prowler? Like,
that was one of those where you're really thinking, okay, the Phaser was out there, and the Phaser was quite a snowmobile,
Mm-hmm.
light, fast, nimble. And we built the Prowler with a little 440 lightweight engine, and it was light. It was fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we tried racing it, oh my Lord, the things just
was
the weak points came out, and we had pushed the envelope hard, and it backfired on us. So we had to struggle through 91 and 92, and the story goes on. Kirk's up front battling for the back to Thunder Bay with Jack Struthers and Doug Lasher. And it's those three going through the woods, and they were in a dogfight. And Kirk just slid up against a tree, and that big cast aluminum spindle broke, and he was out of the race. And I got to tell you, it was the best thing that ever happened to us, because right from that day forward, Brian Nelson and I got on the phone with Roger, and Brian said, I'm going home to Wilmer, and we will be back with a hand-built prototype in less than 2 weeks. And they did.
Really?
And that was the start of the ZR.
Wow.
But
yeah.
when you especially, and we always say, when you get a bunch of farmers together that work hard and they know how to weld and fabricate.
Yep.
Brian brought that prototype up, and we were running it in the ditch south of Thief River Falls with an Indy to St. Hilaire. And we had guys in the pickup following and watching how it would go down the drifts. And we knew, we got a pretty good item here. And we had a Prowler out there too. And
Yeah.
every time that hit a bump, it would the nose would go up, and it kept going farther back and back and back. So,
Just with that, the Prowler, just the wrong direction. Just because it was just like spindle issues, and skid frame was a little bit of an issue, and
body issues, engine mounting issues, the side panels leaked. The engine mounting was these big rubber, and the motor just rocked all over, so the alignment went out. There was a lot of things that just did not work. It looked cool. It was a cool looking
Well, hey,
built
that's something.
Noma, but that didn't work out very good.
I think the 92 EXT Special is probably one of my favorite looking machines, the one with the flames on it and the 550 engine. Yeah.
And it was a fun sled, especially to bop around on and have fun with.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't going to be a cross country racer, because you got to do everything good there.
And yeah, that just, what you said, it was the best thing to happen to Artie Cat, because the ZR came from the Prowler. Like, you got to have something bad to know how to do it better.
Yep.
And that's just cool.
And we went to work hard. I mean, because that race was late January, and so we built some prototypes up that spring. We rode sleds till June 10th up in Alaska.
really,
And then we shipped 5 pre-production ZR 440s up to Alaska in October. And we rode them on the lake up there and in the terrain. And we learned more, and then came home and built 500 of them.
really.
Did the first 500 have case reads then, or were they still those finger read type deal?
Yeah, it would have been the finger read.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were 68 horsepower. We had agreed as all manufacturers to 440, 34 millimeter carburetor, single pipe, which basically put them around that 68 horsepower.
Sure.
And so that, that's what everybody agreed.
Yeah. I like looking back at the engine development on some of that stuff because, like, the Prowler specials and stuff had the reed valves, and just a normal Prowler didn't have any. That was with Suzuki. Like, was there Suzuki engineers at the plant or something?
Oh, yeah.
Like that?
Suzuki always had 4 or 5 engineers in Thief River Falls. Articat would design the engines under Don Idey's direction, and that information was shared back to Japan, and then Suzuki would build the engine and work with our guys on this is how we want to design it. But it was up to us to develop the port timing, the pipe. And there were some pretty creative guys there that did that. Especially when we got into the laydown engine.
Yeah.
So the 93 ZR, that started as what has grown to be one of my favorite chassis ever after racing our 97 ZR these last couple of years. So the 93 ZR, I got a picture here for you, Joey, that it was Jeremy File, Dan Scallett, and Kirk Hibbert to go 1, 2, and 3 at Pine Lake.
Yeah, that, we knew Polaris was going to have a pretty good Indy because they pretty much stayed with that basic Indy, and they had good, efficient drivetrain, and they had a good handling sled.
Yeah.
But, Brian Nelson, Huber Fix, and Steve Thorson, Dean Shortsalter, people like that were very instrumental with us. And all of our guys that were racing, and engineers like Kevin Thompson, who was spearheading that, really put a lot of effort into it and used their knowledge. We had good brakes on it. We had an awesome seat. We had a motor that was mounted correctly and it didn't move around. We had the A-frame suspension. Had better geometry than a trailing arm.
Yep.
So there was a lot of things. It was aerodynamic, and they were sturdy. They were strong, and they were fairly light. And they progressed every year. And so the philosophy at Articat was whatever we raced, the following year that transitioned down into the consumer sleds. So it wasn't long. ZLs, Panthers, Panteras, all had that ZR chassis.
Yeah.
ZRTs. Now, the ZRT chassis just had to be 2 inches longer to fit the triple and all the pipes, but everything else was a ZR. And over time, I think we ended up building a couple 100,000 ZRs and tons of ZRTs, and even the JAGs, the 440s, little fan-cooleds were all in that chassis too.
Yeah.
So it all started with that racelet.
Yeah.
And then it just filtered in and worked its way down. And it was that way till the Firecat.
Really?
Yep. 2003.
Yeah, wow. That's a long time for a sled to run and be dominant.
Going back in time, so like with their, like in the 88s, the 80s, 85 players came out with the 600 triple, and then Articat was developing the Wildcat 650, the big twin.
Big twin.
So like competition there between like the 650s would have been pretty intense during the day, I think, because players had their 650 triple and Articat had their 650 twin. Like, which one makes more power and why? So that's kind of a neat deal to look at, because later on Articat came out with the ZRT. So like, was that a follow-up or an answer to the Polaris 600 triple, or?
Triples there was a time there when triples were, customers were really liking them.
There was a market for
them. There was a market for them. They liked the sound. They liked the feel. They were smooth. The only downfall about a triple it's not a very good handling sled because you got this big gyro under the hood. And I can remember Jack Struthers from Polaris saying that, when he'd get his triples up in the air, they would kind of do what they wanted to do. And
Wow.
Brad and Kirk raced some ZRT 600s in ZR chassis. We got to fit them in there.
Yeah.
And same thing, they said, they got gobs of power, but, you get them up in the air and they kind of want to go where they want to go. Where a twin, it's just more nimble.
Sure.
And then on the oval racing, Formula 3 went that way with those big triples. They had a lot of horsepower, same thing. They were a handful to drive. But yeah, the customers, and then of course, all of a sudden you had 800 triples were really big.
Yeah. Yep.
And those big lake rockets. And, then we came with a 1,000. And, that was like having a Hayabusa.
So with that Pine Lake win in '93 there, when did, we're big Pine Lake fans here, that's all we talk about, probably every episode. When did Pine Lake get to be like big on the schedule of a race director? When were you started circling it? Because
by '93, it was big in our realm, in our schedule, and what we're going to do. Probably when it went very big was you had all these races going on, and John Daniels asked all the races we met at the Shooting Star Casino in Monoma, Minnesota. Jerry Erickson from Thief River was there, Robert Johnson and the gang from Pine Lake, and all these series, these towns, these races showed up, and John had a proposal to start an International Series of Champions, ISOC. And he wanted to see more money for cross-country racers, more prestige. And so everybody agreed to host their race in this circuit.
Oh, sure.
And that's how it was started. And it hit at the right time. It was starting to snow again, and the manufacturers were building more sleds, and entry numbers were going up. And, it worked out good. I mean, we came off disastrous 81, 82, and here we are in the early 90s, 10 years later, and things they're looking up.
Yeah. Because 87 was the first Pine Lake race, and that was just when you had got in as the race director, but that was just like a little, would have been like just a club race that you guys probably wouldn't have known about that first year, or maybe the second year. It's like a little more prestigious.
Oh, definitely.
To grow on the radar of races.
I can still remember going there and with my sled in the back of a red early 70s Ford pickup with my dad. But yeah, once I think Pine Lake really got big in that 90 when that EXT Special came out.
Really?
So that by 93, there was a lot of sleds there. There was a lot of vehicles on the ice. Big following, big race to win.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's every person we've talked to so far, it's like, yep, Pine Lake's the one I want to win that one. I like that race, and the venue, the people.
I can remember Kirk Hibbert going there, might have been in 89, and he was in a heat with John Daniels, and John beat him. John was a good lake racer. And Kirk came back to the trailer and said, in his Idaho accent, I said, I just got myself a lesson. And Kirk learned pretty fast.
Yeah.
He got to be an excellent lake racer. And just even like when Brad Paik joined up with us, I remember Brad coming to the factory, and we met with him about racing Arctic Cats. And he just said, I don't know much about lake racing. Can you guys help me? And we go, yeah, we'll teach you how to go around the ice. And, he took it over from there.
Yeah. Well, you put him on a well-handled ZR. It's almost an easy sled to ride at that point. But I had another picture here for you, Joey. This one went through, came across my Facebook page. It was, it looks to be like a 93 580. And it's you and Kirk at Jackson Hole Hill Climbs, or maybe West Yellowstone. But what looks to be just a normal stock 580 is actually a turboed 580.
That's crazy to think.
This is Jackson Hole. Kirk was, again, a phenomenal mountain rider, and he would always want to go back to Jackson. And so out of the gate, we built 440 ZRs, 500 of them. Mm-hmm. And we followed up with a 580 ZR right away. I think we built it in that January. Mm-hmm. And Al Shimpa was Kirk's mechanic.
Yep.
And Al is one of the smartest fabricators, mechanics that I've ever met. And he took that 580 ZR carbureted, put a turbo on it before anybody even knew what a turbo was.
Yeah, here.
And he calibrated it. And he worked his tail off in West Yellowstone for at least 2 weeks, because we were out there and we were doing the magazine photo shoots, and Al was my guy that kept all the sleds tuned up for the magazine. So in the meantime, he was working on this 580, and finally he said, we're starting to make some headway. I said, stay on it, get her done. And by God, Kirk won Jackson with it.
Even
way before anybody knew what turbos were.
Yeah, gosh, that was what was so out. Like
on a carbureted machine.
Carbureted 580 turbocharged.
Wow,
And,
crazy.
In 93.
Yeah. Yeah, you think about like turboed cars, like 93 was about when they started getting started with turbo cars, and nobody knew what they were doing then with cars. So, yeah, that's kind of
this was way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
How long did it take for someone else to build was there another turboed carbureted sled ever?
It was a long time.
God, that's crazy.
I don't remember long time before there was, any other turbos.
I like the cowboy hat.
Yeah, I don't remember any in those late 90s or anything until like the turbo 660 almost.
Yeah.
Polaris, there's a couple of like drag racers and stuff that would offer up a turbo for like 650s and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think that came out in the 90s.
Oh, sure.
So,
Yeah.
but it's crazy to think about.
Who's wearing the cowboy hat in that picture?
That's Joey.
That's Joey with the cowboy hat. That's a badass cowboy hat.
The cowboy hat had to come out when we went to West Yellowstone and Jackson.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Totally.
Where did the nickname Hollywood come from?
Part of it just kind of coincided that all of us race managers at every manufacturer, as the race season was winding down, the following year, magazines did what was called the road reports, the photo shoots. And it was just natural for the race managers to manage and take care of that. So it was Ray Monsrud from Polaris, Jimmy Kettinger from Yamaha, myself from Articat, and I forget the gentleman who was with Skidoo, but we would just, because the season would be done, and all of a sudden we'd all have about 30, 40 snowmobiles to babysit, and we had good mechanics, and we would work for about a month, the magazine photo shoots. Well, early on, I got to do a lot of the riding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we really didn't go out, and we didn't have money to hire, drivers and stuff like that. So I was in a lot of the photos.
That must be one of them.
Yeah, that was one right there. That was
That's pretty cool.
and so because I was in so many of the photos, Hollywood was nicknamed me, and it stuck for a long time.
Oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, when you are also a rider, why not get on the sled and do the photo shoot yourself? That's
So for myself, I got to work with all the magazine editors and their writers and their photographers. Snowgore magazine utilized Wayne Davis, who was one that were very, very popular. CJ Ramstead, before we lost him. Jim Bilke from Race and Rally, which is now Snowtech, Kevin Bilke.
Oh, okay.
The Super Tracks, the Lesters out of Canada. American Snowmobiler out of Wisconsin. They were, big. Snow West, Steve Janes and that crew. So there was this, and there was Canadian magazines, and there was a whole array of riders and photographers.
Yeah.
And so we got to work with all of them, and they all had different styles and focused on their magazine and what their readers wanted to see and hear.
Sure.
So we would do features and benefits, talk about the tech, do the riding for the photographer, and point out what was new and how we designed it and why we designed it.
Huh.
So it was a pretty good way to spend the end of March and into April.
Yeah.
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 I bet.
That's cool.
You were paid to ride snowmobiles.
Yeah.
So.
And then, and brag about how cool they are and,
Yeah.
all the cool stuff they're
And
you're
we
doing
all
to
hung
them.
out together, all the manufacturers, we were all parked in the same compound. We all had our semis. We'd all go out to eat at night and go out and have fun together.
No bad
And,
blood.
and we'd all
between
go
everyone.
ride together too. And so we would try everybody's sleds. I'd ride, the new Polaris and our Yamaha and this and that. And, it was fun. Everybody got along really good. Too.
Yeah.
Real good.
Huh. Cool.
So that just makes it better. That,
Yeah.
no one's mad at a better sled or
Yeah.
someone's getting more pictures or
Yep.
anything like that. Yeah, that's cool.
So a little off timeline here now, just with some random questions. How did the TNS racing team kind of get collaborated in? Like, where did that start and come from?
Well, here again, Ole wanted to make sure that we had an oval racing effort. Because, you go back in the 70s and the Snow Pro was the circus. It was the show. It was big. You had all the manufacturers and the drivers in their leather suits. And so Ole said, we got to have a good oval team. And Brian Espeseth, who was the head of our service and warranty, has got a lot of race background. He raced for Articat, and he told Ole, he said, let me go talk to my good friend Steve Thorson. And I didn't know Steve. I knew who he was. But Brian had a much tighter, closer relationship. And Brian went to Steve and said, hey, Ole wants us to race ovals. We'd like you guys to spearhead it. We'd like you to be the team.
Yeah.
And Steve said, well, we got to get a driver. And it was down to Todd Elmer, who was a very, very good racer and a veteran at the time. Or we went with this young gunslinger named Brian Sturgeon. And Steve said, I know Todd could win right out of the gate, but for the longevity, and we knew Brian was a really strong, hard charger, and we went with the young gun. And we went to Alexandria, historic, legendary racetrack.
Yep.
And we had the 88 Wildcat, the 650 twin, because, we had the Yamaha or the Polaris 650 triples and our 650 twin were battling out.
Yeah.
And on the racetrack is where we were going to show dominance. And we kept blowing it up. And Brian got on the phone, and being the head of the parts department, he told someone back in Thief River, get some cylinders and pistons out to the airport and get them flown down to Alexandria here. We got to build this motor overnight. And they did on a Friday night. And
Wow.
Brian went out and won the race on Saturday. And there again, that was kind of like Kirk winning the 500.
Yep.
When Brian won that big oval race, that was big to us. That was a feather in our cap. And of course, you're not going to find smarter, especially when it comes to oval racing, than Steve Thorson and his cohort Dean Schwarzwalter,
Yep.
TNS Racing.
Yep.
So we had a very good relationship with them guys. We built customize oval sleds. We built 25 Formula 3s the following year so that we had a group of them out there across the country. We built some very good modified Mod 1 and Mod 2 sleds. And things that Steve and Dean built on those sleds, like those Wildcat A-arms are what were on the 90 EXT Special. And same when we got into the ZR, there was things that transitioned because the ZR was an awesome a stock sled, but also made one heck of a modified oval sled too.
I'd love to go to Herfindahl sometime and check out his collection.
Yeah,
he has a lot of that.
He's got a lot of
stuff.
that era.
And that old Wildcat chassis in the 650, 700 era is actually a belt drive machine. So like,
Oh yeah, instead of a chain case.
yeah,
I remember
it's
seeing that.
Kind of neat to like, how did the brakes work on it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's
Steve and Dean, put belt drive on those modified sleds, and it worked very good. But we got to Eagle River, and if you had drivers like a Brian Sturgeon that could drive that sled into the corner at 100 miles an hour with 12-inch carbides, it would load the chassis so hard that if the chassis just flexed a little bit, the belt would come off.
pop off.
Which, that's the things you see when you go racing.
Yep.
Now, some people say, oh, well, you can set that up with on a dyno or
Yeah.
whatever. But that's not how farmers do it. And you go on the racetrack and you see that, and those farmers will go back and fix it. So the next weekend when you go to the race, they'll make a plate or they'll design something so it doesn't fall off. That's where racing can really, really accelerate development.
How important that is to find the weak points, and to find those weak points, you got to stress everything about it, and then you put it on an oval track, you're going to stress different things than you would in cross country and other race tracks. So
you break it at a race and you go home that week, you fix it, and you go back to the to the race again to try it again and see if it works. So really a good way to develop product.
Oh yeah,
big time.
Yeah. And TNS was the best at like the innovation. Like Kyle, you brought it up a few months ago, the composite chassis.
Yeah, they built a complete composite chassis.
Like just something like that. The innovation.
It was all one piece, tunnel and bulkhead, all one piece. That's kind of crazy.
They were not afraid to push the envelope, and sometimes things didn't work.
Yeah,
it's just the nature of the beast. But very, very creative.
Yeah.
And, they knew everything about geometry and clutching and how to make it handle, and that, which is kind of an art in itself.
Yeah.
You could see it early on back in the 70s when Steve Thorson was racing Firecat. In the 78 year, they came out with the Snow Pro ice chassis, and that was a completely different sled than the 77 prior year. It had AFS, independent front suspension, just because oval racing was so big back in the day. But look at a 77Z to a 78 Snow Pro. It's crazy the differences in them, like the development that had to go on.
Yeah.
Takes a genius to rework whatever the hell a 78 Snow Pro is. So.
Yeah, and you go back and look at a lot of race results. Steve Thorson started at a very young age. He was part of that team frustration for Jerry Simison down by Detroit Lakes there. A lot of top racers went through that organization. And then Steve got picked up by the Polaris team. Of course, he won Eagle River 76 and 77.
Yep.
He was on the team with Hewlings and Bunky, and those guys will tell you too, and people know that they were a powerhouse. And when they came out with those first independent oval sleds, you can talk to a Larry Colton or anybody and say, "Woo, we got our butts handed to us." But then it, forced them to go build an independent an IFS.
Yeah.
And pretty soon everybody had them. Skidoo had it, and Cat had it, and Yamaha, everybody. So, again, racing really accelerated that development.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to look at that 10-year span from 1970 to 1980. Look at the development of machines. It's crazy, and I believe it's all because of the Snow Pro Ice Series or Oval Series. But like 1970, they're just a square chassis with an engine and a belt. The chain case is on the secondary clutch, But then by 1980, players had the Indy by then.
Yep.
So it's really crazy to look at how fast things developed there. So,
and they gave the Players Guides gave a really good history of the Indy last year at the Snowmobile Hall of Fame, and Bert Bassett talked about the first one being built all out of wood.
Holy crap.
And that's how they built the concept and how things fit. And of course, you look back, Bert did a lot of the prototype racing of it in the proto class. So they knew it. They developed it through the racing, and that crew up there 60 miles north of Thief River, they were pretty darn smart.
Yeah.
And, so, we had this, it was really fun having the rivalry. Ole had relatives from Roseau, and there was this very deep down passion to race and compete against the Players Roseau crew and the Arctic Thief River crew. Put hockey aside, it was snowmobile racing. So, that was a big driver.
Oh, yeah. No, competition is the biggest driver when it comes to anything or everything.
So, like on the topic of ovals, Jim Dimmerman won on the Arctic in '84, but then there wasn't a world championship win until '02 with PJ Wanderscheid. And it wasn't for lack of effort throughout all those years. Like the Arctic were really good in the stock classes and like the F3 classes and whatnot. But it's just the world championship class that just had a little bit of trouble securing that win.
Yeah, we didn't at the factory. We didn't focus on building and doing an actual factory team. We put our eggs into the cross country, the ZRs, those types of sleds. And of course the ZR did everything: stock racing, oval racing, cross country. Snowcross was coming around. So Wanderscheids, who had come out, they'd done a lot of the stock racing, and here they were going to get into the World's Championship class. Those guys really took the bull by the horns, and they built their own chassis and
Really?
Worked with guys on motors. And, I remember one of the first times I watched PJ race, it was like, oh my Lord, can this young guy go? And he did. And, so that was pretty exciting. And they used it to grow their business.
Yep.
Country Cat. Those guys built some pretty nice equipment.
Yep. Eagle River, we can't find any information on the 24 hours of Eagle River. The Lake of Torches 24 hours of Eagle River race. Like there's not a whole lot of information on. I think they did it twice.
They did with 440 cross country sleds.
Okay.
They would run around the track there, and then they would send them out, like in a cross country, and they'd bring them back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because there's I think it's the '97 Arctic Cat informational video that we watched on here. It's conflicting videos where they have some videos of a
lake,
of champ sled setup, and then other ones where they're actually hitting some bumps and it's a normal trail looking sled.
It was a combination of all the sleds we were racing. I think in the 24-hour one, Nielsen Enterprises, Ted Nielsen, and they were sponsored by Valvoline. They had a red, white, and blue, really cool-looking Valvoline ZR.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mike Campbell was the driver.
Any
Just one driver?
I
No, I think it was two of them.
think they had two. Yeah.
That would be
Not
crazy.
Sure if that's the one, but didn't a white and blue Valvoline sled have a? I think it had a ZRT engine.
We
in
had
it.
they had a Formula 3 for Mike Campbell
Okay.
also.
Yeah,
Mm.
I see.
Huh.
And if you look at Nielsen's Skidoo twin trackers with the Decker boys, they were all Valvoline.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they had kind of a fleet of Artie Cats and a fleet of Skidoo twin trackers that
Yep.
were all red, white, and blue Valvoline.
Were you out there at all for those 24-hour races?
I was not at the 24-hour, but I was at the regular Derby.
Sure.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, there's just not a whole lot of information on the 24-hour races, and it's just, I wish there was more on it.
Yeah,
It's
that's
such a cool
one of
event.
one of the things that we talked about earlier on the show is our dream race, and one of them would be a 24-hour race.
Eagle River was really neat. I mean, you go back and you look at the history and watch some of the videos. Arctic did a really good one when Bobby Elsner won in '79. And again, we wanted to make sure that we could win at Eagle River. When we built that ZR and things were starting to come around, the one year, I don't think we lost a stock class.
Yeah.
Brian won Formula 3. We won some of the Mod 1 and Mod 2.
Yep.
Looking back, it sure would have been fun if we would have had a high Zoot or 340 oval sled. But when Brian won that Formula 3 and guys like Herzig and DeVolts won in those stock classes.
Yep.
I had an all-white suit made by Tim Benedict, who was the head of Arctic Wear and a former racer. Tim made sure that Hollywood had the one-of-a-kind white suit to hand out those big monster checks.
Yeah.
And, boy, I gave a lot of money one of those years at Eagle. It must have been 95, and we handed a lot of cash out. But the industry was doing good, and it was a fun time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that white suit because you had posted a picture of your daughter Gabby a few years ago wearing it.
It's a medium tall.
No, that's cool. That was really cool.
Yeah. No,
Did it have Hollywood stitched onto the back of it?
No Hollywood, but had my name embroidered in
okay,
it.
yeah.
It was a one of a kind.
Yeah, that's special.
Yeah.
That's cool.
like the success of the ZR chassis, it wasn't very much longer that the development of the Firecat chassis started, like within 5 years, wasn't it?
No, it was about 10. Because the first ZR came out in '93, and the first Firecat was '03.
Yeah. I remember seeing prototype chassis that were like Cougars.
No, the first Firecat prototype was a ZR.
Yep. I remember
that was narrowed up.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it at the 60th anniversary.
Yeah,
I
and
think those were the coolest sleds there. Just those prototype ones where they cut like
They cut
4
it in
inches.
half. Yeah.
So Hubert Fixon, which was affiliated with Brian Nelson, he was his mechanic for many years, and he was an advisor for us on sleds. Him and Ron Bergman got together. I mean, these are farm guys. And they took a ZR and basically run her through the saw and narrowed her up. They knew they fabricated everything, how to mount the motor and the track, and you got to make a narrow skid frame. And I remember driving it on the river. I mean, this thing, it was fast. She was aerodynamic. It was narrow.
Yeah.
You could, you could move around on it real easy. And it was like, that was called Skinny Mini. And that was the precursor of us building a Firecat.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there had 3 variations of
Yes,
that
they
up
did.
there, and I thought those were the 3 of the coolest sleds.
Yeah.
I think Tom Rowland, Tom of Snow Sports, has all of them now.
Yeah.
The whole philosophy was narrow, aerodynamic, lighter, less rotating mass.
On the development of the engine, who was the guy who thought to turn the engine around?
That was Don Eide. And Don, I can still remember seeing the sketch in his office that was used for the patent. They wanted to lay the motor down to get the cylinders, the CG down lower. The carburetors going forward, the exhaust still going forward.
Yep.
And it was just to get that motor closer to the driver and get the weight down. So it was pretty ingenious.
Yeah, that's
So he would take that concept to Japan, and they would draw it. They would do the actual hard design.
Sure. With the concept of the Firecat, you guys actually had a 500 triple ready, didn't you?
We had a 500 triple that was all tooled, ready for production, and the triple stuff was starting to lose its.
Like, did you
luster.
have 500 triples in Firecat chassis? Like
Nope.
in any testing or anything, or
They would have been in ZRs.
oh, they would have. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you also had that 1100 triple.
We had 1100 triple with power valves.
yeah. Jim Dimmerman just built the
Yep.
sled around it.
Yep.
That
There was a
thing-
bunch of them got thrown away.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
it was sad.
I remember at the Articat 50th seeing it. I was
Yeah.
like, I was
No.
12
It-
years old or whatever.
What happened is it got down to, we had to make a decision in product planning. Do we build an 1100 triple? She was going to be a strong 180 horsepower, or do we build this lay down, lightweight 700 twin?
yeah.
And getting everybody together and analyzing it and trying to read the crystal ball, the nod was to go with the 700 Firecat, because we would build 500s and 600s and 800s. We would build more engines off that. If we would have built an 1100 triple, we would have sold gobs of them right away, but it would have been very short-lived.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, it's just a small group.
Yep.
They wouldn't have been cheap, but they would have been monsters.
They would have been a hell of a machine.
Yeah.
No, that was one of my favorite stories that you told on the Carbide podcast of the 1100 triple.
Yeah.
Like what could have been. But like there's a bunch of stuff like that all those prototype parts like that and so on and so forth that just get thrown away. That just no use and just get put in the back room, get put in the dumpster and never seen again.
Yep. And it's, a lot of it kind of almost makes you want to cry.
Nah. Well, yeah, when it's your kind of baby and
Yeah.
and just never get to see it come to, the market or,
Because that was in your role of snowmobile product manager, that everything of that sorts was going on.
Yes. As product manager, you're kind of the traffic cop. You're working with engineering, you're working with marketing, you're working with the other departments on what the snowmobiles are going to be, what are the features. You got to do a business case. You got to crunch the numbers. You got to read the crystal ball. You gotta look at what the other competitors are doing. You're kind of like the guy, I guess that was, you're building a football team and who's going to be your quarterback, your running back, your defensive line, that type of thing.
Sure. What about when the cross country snowmobile circuit 0203 went to the 1 year of 500s? What were your thoughts on that? Because it only happened for 1 year.
They were getting fast. The 440 started out at 68 horsepower, and the last 440 was 103.
Wow.
Still going through 34 millimeter carburetor, still going through a single pipe.
Yeah.
But the manufacturers knew how to design and develop, and technology made, those things were over 100 horsepower at the end.
God, that's just nuts.
Because I think you're like the 97 ZRU race. I mean, she's well up in the 90s.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think our 97 XER they rated that like 96, 97. Yeah.
Yeah, we were all pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
And then wasn't long, everything went 600s,
Yep.
which kind of went, we really didn't need to go any faster.
No, that was, a lot of people thought that was a crazy jump going from 440s all the way to
Yeah.
600s.
Because we were at 580, Skidoo was 521, Polaris was at 500, and we all agreed in 92 or 90, Yeah, right after the 90 season. That's when we all agreed to go to 440s.
Really?
Yep. And Yamaha didn't have a 440, so they bowed out. And we were kind of hoping they would have jumped on board with us.
Yeah, because it seems like Yamaha was in it early 90s and then didn't really make a comeback till like Snowcross.
Right.
98, 97.
What could have been?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, true. God, that would have been. I would have liked to see a 440 Yamaha. That would have been sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their open sleds were watercraft engines.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, because they had.
They were really close at doing it. When we started dealing and partnering with Yamaha, we did, we learned then that they were very, very close, but at the last minute they bailed out.
Wonder why.
It all comes down to product planning and direction and where do you want to spend your resources.
Yep.
Yep. We were very race driven.
Yeah.
So it was easy for us to swallow that pill.
Why? So a question about the Sioux, like mid 90s to like let's just say like 97. Why wasn't there a big push like towards the Sioux or like a bigger Sioux program?
The Sioux for us, we were so heavy into the 500 over here. The old Winnipeg race, the Thunder Bay race, the USCC 500. The Sioux was always that crew from Michigan out there. We did go out there a couple times and got it handed to us. We were like, if we're not going to concentrate on this, we better not try to mess with this. Now you look back and that race is building quite a bit of momentum.
Yep. Because I just think back, I think like let's say 97, I think it was Pierce and Cricky to win it that year. If you were to go 97 to send Kirk, Pake, and File out there on a ZRT triple in 97, you think that'd be a pretty good team to send out there.
I think it would, but for us, we were so busy into the ISOC circuit that we didn't want to take away any of that effort. Even like when we would send Steve and Dean out there to go run that, it wasn't your classic sprint oval race. It was this long, durable endurance, and we never pulled the trigger on it like we needed to.
Yep. It seemed like in 98 is when Corey and Steve won it their first time. Being Minnesota guys, that's when it kind of started trickling back towards Minnesota. It got, because I talked to Brian Dyrdahl just a few days ago, and he said, up until he went out there that year, he'd never even heard about it almost.
Yeah.
It's something you read in Snow Week, but then that's about it. Just being that disconnected to it, being all the way over there in Michigan. Well, that was a Sioux question I had.
Oh, yeah.
Your dog sleeping there, Jesse? So to get back into some 90s stories, Brian Dyrdahl was on the show, and he told a story about you. It was you and him and Trevor John driving around at the I-500, and they changed the course, and you pointed out to the guys that the course had changed. You got to turn here instead of going straight. Do you remember that conversation?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Very well. We actually were sponsored by Dodge for a couple of years.
Oh, really?
Dodge Ram.
Yeah, that was another question on how that came about.
So it was Dodge trucks. And we had a Dodge Durango that we were used to go to the races and all that. And so we're up in Warroad for the 500. Day one is done. And grabbed Trevor, Brian, and, geez, I thought there might have been one other. But for sure, those two guys.
Yeah.
Was it Pake?
No.
Can't remember if he said another name or not.
But we jumped in that Durango. We went south of Warroad, and I knew the course and I knew all that, and I took them guys out to this spot. And it was confusing because the race come down this ditch and it went out on this side, and then the first day they went to the right, and oh man, and I said, you guys got to be careful. They're probably going to pull the markers up. put new ones down. So don't get in your head to follow the old trench or
Oh, sure.
got to pay attention at this spot. And Trevor, you're in the lead. it's you know, you got to really be on guard.
Yeah, you're winning this thing.
Yeah.
And the nightmare hit because the next day he went breezing right down there, and he went a long ways. And I remember asking him afterwards, did you see any signs? No.
Nope.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything until someone ran me down, and it was just, we got sick to our stomach. And I think Todd Wolf ended up winning that year.
Yep. Yeah, he did.
So that would have been probably 98, 99, something around there.
Yep.
98, I bet. And
Because he
Trevor
won it.
felt pretty bad
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine.
because he was fast.
Yeah, that's what I think. It was Bubba Ness said that he would have won it that year.
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was quick.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
He was, one of them Brainerd guys. There were some pretty fast guys out of Brainerd. You had Logie, Eric Logie. You had File. You had Trevor John. You had,
Dan Scallett.
well, Scallett was Minneapolis, but
Oh,
around that Brainerd area, you had the Fearbins and
Aaron Scheel was he around that area?
he is North Branch,
Okay.
north side of the cities. But you had Jimmy Kendall out of Brainerd. There was a lot of guys right around that Nisswa, Pequot Lakes, Brainerd area
Yeah.
that were really good snowmobile racers.
Then Todd Wolf kind of went on a tear there for 3 years. I think he won it 3 years.
Yeah.
What is there
it was-
a lot of motivation to?
Well, I think when Todd and Bob Coffin, jumped on with Skidoo and Skidoo, I remember Tom Rager telling me, we wanted to race green.
Yeah.
We wanted to race against Arctic. And, we had to, go out there and find a really good driver and a crew and a team, with Bob Coffin. And that's what they did. And so they made it interesting, and it was good. There was another color out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was 98, 99 that Todd won it.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian won in 2000.
Yep.
Because we had a really good sled in 98.
Yep. Yep.
But if Lady Luck's not on your side
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you make a wrong turn,
yeah.
someone's going to be there to pick it up.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of luck
Yeah.
that goes into everything.
So that would have been the same year that it was December of 97 when Brian Dyrdahl won the Pine Lake race. So he would have been on a 98 sled.
98 chassis. Yep.
He won the race with some Polaris goggles on. And Bubba Ness said you were not happy about that.
Bubba probably remembers all that more than I do. But
But I was thinking back of that Bubba handed Brian some goggles before the race. And Brian uses those goggles to win with. And I think back to all the prepping I do with my goggles.
Yeah. Yep.
And here Brian's just going to go race with a random
pair
of goggles on.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had said, it was a big picture in maybe Snow Week or something. And he had Polaris goggle strap on winning Pine Lake. And
yeah, the Polaris word wasn't very favorable to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were friends, but we were definitely competitors.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Somehow you were the one that kind of started the NHRA asphalt snowmobile drag racing kind of thing. You were one of the guys.
So, ISOC was rolling, and we were down at BIR working with Dick Rowe, the owner. And, hey, is there any chance we could race snowmobiles here? And he said, yeah, I'd like to have you guys here in the winter. And, we have this closed course cross country around the facility. And while we were kind of wrapping up that discussion, we were sitting in his one of his pace cars. They were Pontiac pace cars. And we're sitting at the line of the drag strip. And I asked Dick, I said, would you ever let us run a snowmobile down this drag strip? And he looked at me like, you must be nuts. I said, no, we test snowmobiles on the asphalt in the summer. So I'd like to bring one down here and try it.
just to see what it would do in a quarter
See
mile?
what it'd do in a quarter mile, and Dick said, well, yeah, I need to drive it because I want to know what this thing's going to do. So we ran one down there, and Dick drove it. He said, we are going to have an exhibition during the NHRA. He said, this is one of the coolest things I've ever driven. So I asked Jim Dimmerman to be the driver, and Al Shimpa set it up.
What sled did you bring down there?
We brought just one of our ZRT 800s that we had at the Road Reports magazine photo shoots. And Al went over to field test and got a track that they had been running out on the asphalt because it wore the lugs down real good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically a slick.
Yeah, you didn't have slicks at this time, though.
Nope. And so he put that track on. Dick Rowe drove it, and he gave the nod, and he called NHRA, and we were in, that would have been 95.
Really?
So we did this exhibition run during the early August BIR NHRA Nationals, and it was cool. That led the next year to all four manufacturers agreeing to bring 2 factory riders and race 800 triples in a factory shootout. And I had called Camoplast, talked to the head engineer. His name was Denny Cordemonch. And he helped us develop a lot of tracks for ZRs and Thundercats and all that. And I asked him to build us a slick. And he thought I was nuts. But when I told him what we were doing, and he said, yeah, that'd be no problem. So he built the asphalt track, and he had it in 3 different durometers, a soft, a medium, and a hard. And we tested them, and so there's asphalt tracks still to this day that are used in asphalt racing. And it was fun. It was clean. It was fast. You got your timing slip every time you made a run. You never had this variable of, studs in the dirt and all that. You just rolled the sled out because, there was wheels in the skis.
Okay.
And they launched off the line.
God, I couldn't even imagine the launch.
Yeah,
The pull off the line.
They wouldn't even slip the track a quarter inch.
Oh my gosh.
And so we go there for that first factory shootout, and Yamaha wins it the first year with they did a 998 and a quarter mile. And under 10 seconds, there's not a lot of street cars.
Right.
There's no street cars that'll do it.
Yeah.
And here you've got a 500 and some pound snowmobile that at the time was about $10,000 that can go that fast. So, that was the start of the asphalt racing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like that, a new variation of the sport was born.
Yeah.
All it took was one ride down the track too
Yep.
for it to be greenlit.
And they are fun to drive. I mean,
just the pull.
yeah.
And it seemed like Jim Dimmerman kind of went crazy with that for a little while.
Yeah, Jimmy liked straight line racing, and he was big into it, and he was a good ambassador, and he worked it pretty hard. Yep.
But you said there's wheels on the. That was my first question. What's on the skis?
In the skis, we just machined out the saddle, and we put 3 skid frame wheels.
Oh, okay.
3 in the front, 3 in the back. It works pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Because that was my first what's on there, like rubber strips or something like that. Like the first picture in my head of the skis were super dumb.
The Canterbury Super Enduros. What do we need to do to bring those back?
Oh, I wish that was back. That was really a highlight when we raced there. The owner of Canterbury at the time, his name was Randy Sampson, and they knew snowmobiling. They worked with us to host this event there. Of course, then it was all rough down the front straightaway, and then you raced down the back chute.
Yep.
Just smooth ice and around the corners. One of the biggest events that they ever had for crowd was when that race was going on. In fact, they always said, geez, we'd like to bring that back. Yeah. Look, I mean, the people, phenomenal. Yeah, there was thousands of people.
Yeah, the picture here of Brad Paik and Brian Dyrdahl and Todd Wolf sitting there. That's a pretty cool picture. And like Brian had said, like just the stands were packed. Just
Oh yeah,
Thousands of people, you
Thousands.
said. God.
that's unreal. That is a cool picture, especially being that it's the 97 ZRs.
Yeah, yeah. And then watching.
yeah. I
Tony
don't know.
Heikkinen.
Right now, if they'll only do the snowcross there, it would be fun. I wish they would do another
Yeah.
quasi the cross country.
Yep. Yeah, because when Tony Heikkinen won it that first year, that was quite the spectacle of how he was jumping. It wasn't even jumps on the front stretch. It was just like,
Minefield.
yeah. Yep. And somehow he was pulling doubles out of it and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, minefield. That's one way to put it, I'd say.
But that would be an interesting course to have something set up so rough like that in the front stretch and then ice in the back stretch. On nowadays sleds, how would you set up for that? You'd have to be like
Jesse Stray got a good run there one year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty damn neat seeing the stands packed like that.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Oh, it was crazy.
Just it looks like a NASCAR race.
yeah. I mean, even the video, like there's good video of it back then, and they have a video of Kirk crashing, and I think Paik fell off once, and so that was a gnarly race.
Yeah.
What's it like when you're there? Like it's like I can't believe what this is coming to, just on how rough and extravagant it was getting, or was it just? It was a cool spectacle being there, and it was just kind of a normal cross country kind of race.
We knew it was big.
Yeah.
Of course, with all the people, and, everybody went to it. It was kind of like going to Eagle River. It was the highlight.
Yeah, that is a cool picture. Oh yeah. One thing I found doing some research that was kind of interesting was Brad Paik wins the Ironman in '95, but gets DQ'd for illegal cylinders. But there was something in the rules to where there was porting and polishing with the Suzuki cylinders, and his were like right on the spec. But they still DQ'd him, and Roger Skym was not very happy about it.
No.
But he said it was like the cylinders were right on the spec of the spec sheets that were printed out, but for some reason they still DQ'd them.
That stuff happened a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
I think, what did Brian Dyrdahl say? Oh, about his A-arms. They
Yeah.
thought they were chromoly A-arms
Yeah.
because they had, TNS had just ground out the factory welds and TIG welded some stronger welds in there. And I thought there was something else that Brian had said.
Well, and then there was another time at that race because it was all on some years it was all on the river.
Oh, really?
And you look at the sleds now when we lake race, how them outside lugs rip off.
Yep.
Well, back then, guys like Brad and that could drive that hard would throw the lugs off their outside. And when they did that, now they wanted to kick them out because they said there's no rubber there and your stud is too long.
Oh, sure.
Because you got to be 3/8 above the highest point of the track.
Yep.
Well, at the start of the race, your track is good.
Yep.
When you race 100 and some miles down an ice groove, they wear out.
Oh, yeah.
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 That's one thing I think they should do today is tech the studs before the race.
Yeah, we talked about that before. Because, we'll do 1 to 2 ice races on our sleds, and that track is shot.
Yeah.
Every single outside lug is gone.
The studs actually start to pull through the track, so they get a little above the gauge, and they're like, it's right on the gauge. Well, it's like, well, they pull through a little bit. But, yeah.
But whatever came, was there anything that ever came about that, because I know then they were checking the cylinders before the races after that.
Well, back then, if we had the factory, like Suzuki, cut the cylinders,
Yep.
as long as they were within the registered spec,
Yep.
you know, it was legal.
Yeah.
But prior to that, a lot of the cylinders were always, they were never touched. They were just cast piece, and they really varied a lot.
Sure.
Well, racing got so darn serious and competitive, you know, us and the other guys did it too.
Oh yeah.
They would have their engine, Fuji, Suzuki, Rotax,
Yeah.
cut them at the factory.
Yep. Because they were like at that time, like I'm sure everybody was blueprinting and everything was to exact spec as it
Right.
could be. But yeah. In the article I read, that Paik was kind of bummed about that because at that time the Ironman was $12,000
Oh,
to
yeah.
win,
Yeah.
and to be within spec
Yeah.
but still get DQ'd.
Yeah.
Unreal. But then the next 2 years it was better for Team Arctic Cat because then Jeremy File went on to win at 96, 97
Yeah.
to win the Ironman. So that had to have been pretty cool. And he said it was cool winning it on Arctic Cat in Thief River.
Yeah.
Was like for us, we weren't around for Ironman. It doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but like my dad said, like it was number 2 right behind the 500.
Oh, yeah.
That it was a big deal.
It was a very big deal.
Huh.
Yeah, that's one I wish they would bring back or do something similar to that style of racing.
It seems like everyone that we've talked to wants that race to come back.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
We were fortunate. Brian Espeseth was the instigator. He put it together. And he was heavily involved with the Snowdrifter Club, and he knew a lot of sponsors, and he basically organized it all, and he wanted that race big.
Really?
So they would do their cross-country section, and then, you know, some years we'd race out at the fairgrounds. Some years, the guys got off and ran 440 fanners, like a international race of champions.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of different things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And there was a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of celebrities would come up.
Celebrities.
You know, like Minnesota Vikings, North Star players, NHRA guys, Ricky Craven, you know, NASCAR guy came. You know, people like that.
Yeah.
I'll be damned. Just
Because it was tied in with Make-A-Wish.
okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, that was Brian being instrumental, putting that all together.
Just to get more eyes and to tell more people
Yep.
and bring more people in. Yeah.
Get more sponsors.
Yep.
Oh, that is cool. So, like, in that era, that 96, 97 era, there was a lot of money in the sport. Like, I've heard rumors about, like, the race budgets that you guys would have, like, in 96, 97, and it was, like, it was millions.
Yes. But
Holy shit.
the industry was, you know, all of us were building together 250,000 snowmobiles.
Yeah.
You know, the industry today is only about 100,000.
I think 97 was the best selling year there ever has been.
Well, you go on Marketplace, you can find a 97 ZR
Yeah.
right over there.
I bet there's 3 in Clearbrook right now.
Well, part of our Through the Race program, we sold 2,000 race sleds through the program one year.
Wow.
That just goes to show how many people were racing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, you look at it now, Polaris Race Department, they only give out 100 maybe, 100 some.
It's way, way down. Yeah.
God damn. That's insane.
Yeah, because that's where I've heard. Yeah, I heard the number was in the millions of the race budget, and like I believe it because on how much innovation was going on and everything.
And all the eyes on it, all the racers, it just seemed bigger and just
It was. So hopefully we get some good winners back. You know, it could grow back again, but
Yeah.
it's going to be, it'll be tough.
but
I thought I had another picture to go along with that story, but no. So Jesse, I got to personally thank you for being the one to get the ball rolling on the Yamaha partnership, because that's the sled that I race now. Is the
Did you say
You
Jesse?
called him Jesse.
Yeah.
I did? Oh. So, Joey, I got to personally thank you about the Yamaha partnership of that is the motor that I run with now. I think you said it was like 09, 2010 era is when you contacted, actually somebody from Yamaha contacted you, right?
Jimmy Kettinger at Yamaha called me up, and they were very interested in our ACT planetary gear drive box,
Is that the Diamond Drive?
Diamond Drive.
Oh, okay.
Because it would work good for them because there's no jack shaft, and their pipes came over the top of the tunnel. So it would work really good for how their snowmobile was designed. While we were discussing that, I knew that because of product planning that Suzuki was going to pretty much quit developing snowmobile engines. So we were going to need a 4-stroke engine because we'd be losing ours.
Yeah.
And so I asked Jim, I said, do you think Yamaha would sell us the Nitro 3-cylinder, 1049 cc? He goes, I'll go ask. And he called back in a day or two, and we set up a meeting, and we were going to Japan to talk to Suzuki. And so while we were there, we talked with Yamaha. And, history was pretty much made.
Yeah.
Wow.
They said, yep, we would love to sell you an engine. Wasn't long after that, they said, you build snowmobile for us. And
So
our
originally-
company said, yeah, we'd be willing to do that.
So originally it was just buying the engine, and then they were the ones that brought up like, hey, Bill, let us use your chassis.
They wanted to buy our Diamond Drive, and then we asked them for their motor. The Diamond Drive went off, didn't even got brought up anymore.
Oh, really?
And once they agreed to sell us engines to put in Arctic chassis, they immediately said, let you build us a snowmobile.
Wow.
And so then we worked together on what differences would there be. And
Because you can't just make the same exact sled
Right.
and just have it one blue and one green.
Yeah.
So yeah.
so there was a lot of body parts that were designed and styled by their team. They work closely with us.
Yep.
So it was actually a very, very good partnership.
Yeah.
Was it Yamaha that kind of got started doing the turbo stuff then, or was it Arctic?
Well, yeah, because our turbo was going to have the life expectancy with them. They would still build it, but then we were on a trail. We were on a snowmobile trail. Roger Skyme and I and a gentleman by the name of Masa Saito, and we were talking about future engines, and we shut the sleds off. We're sitting there. It's a beautiful blue day, perfect temperature. It was in late March, and Masa basically said, we start turbo. I go, 3-cylinder? He nodded his head. Yes. And wasn't long after that, when we were in Japan, we got to see it. And
Would that have been the 998 or?
that had been the 998.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah. Because some of the differences between the big 1049 Suzuki Twin and the Yamaha 998 Triple, you got an engine that runs much higher RPM, which, has its benefits when it comes to clutching and gearing, and it just was a better deal, and it ran phenomenal. Oh, it was got to meet the young engineer that calibrated it. In fact, I remember asking him, how high can you go with horsepower boost? Oh, I can't tell you. I go, it's quite high, isn't it? It's high.
But to ask Yamaha about that, the 1049 in 09, 2010, the Nitro, it just kind of came out in 2008. So that was pretty forward thinking on after seeing that, that like, hey, well, that motor might
Mm-hmm.
be something special in the future.
Well, we had rented a nitro out in West Yellowstone. I think we probably had some at the factory too. So we knew how they ran
Sure.
and how they felt. In fact, I remember one time we had some dealers in, and they rode it, and they go, "Put that engine in our sled,"
That was
because they really like that 3-cylinder sound and feel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've said that before, is to put that 3-cylinder 4-stroke engine in like a 97 ZR chassis, or even like a 2000 Polaris Gen 2 chassis.
Yeah.
You'd have an ice machine then.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that played a big part of that was because of this whole emissions
Yep.
certification, EPA requirements, you had to have more 4-strokes in your fleet to make
Oh, is that how
government regulation. So that's why you had to have 4-strokes in your fleet.
I see.
Wow. Huh.
So is it like
If there wasn't a government regulation,
There'd be no 4-stroke.
I don't think you'd see any 4-strokes.
really?
But when that came in, and you had to make cleaner engines, the way to do that is with a 4-stroke,
Yep.
or like the E-Tech design.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That is, I didn't think of it that way.
No, not at all.
I just thought they like kind of the innovation of like dirt bikes on how they went from 2-strokes to 4-strokes. But I'm guessing that was kind of a similar
That
story.
was emissions too, California.
I'll be damned. Yeah.
So you had to come with an engine, in simple layman's terms, that burns all the gas in the cylinder when the exhaust port is shut off. That's what it comes down to. And an older 2-stroke, a lot of
Yeah.
raw
Blow by,
fuel
yeah.
goes out.
Yep.
They're not very efficient.
But they sound cool as hell.
Yeah, I'm convinced when I'm 80 years old, I'm still going to be building 2-strokes.
Yeah. See, I like the 4-stroke sound too. I like that deep, throaty, just raw, low. Yeah, I like the 4-stroke sound too. I like that a lot.
Throwing it back with another picture here, Joey. 95 Pake. Who won it that?
Pake, File, and Kirk. One,
Yep.
2, 3.
Yep.
And then Val Schlaben won the women's class, and Paul Dick won the masters.
Yeah.
We had a clean sweep. And
Wow.
that race started, that was the last of the black ZRs.
ETT on the back, yeah.
Yep.
And then a clear tank. Huh.
Clear tank. We started in, I believe we started in Beausejour.
Oh, really?
I think we did. But the race ended up on Mille Lacs. That's, in fact, we had to haul the sleds from Bemidji to Mille Lacs, and then we unloaded them all there, and then the guys everybody raced around Mille Lacs Lake for a day. Because we wanted to get more miles in and have, close to a true I-500.
Yep.
And, we were pretty strong with the ZR.
Yeah. That had to have been such a cool feeling. Like, that's 95, so you're deep into your term of race director to have your top 3 guys go 1, 2, and 3 in the I-500.
Yep.
That has been a pretty cool feeling.
It was really fun because WCCO flew their traffic helicopter up there to do a story for the news. And while they were there, one of the guys said, hey, they want someone to ride in that helicopter to tell them who's who and what's what. And so they came to me and said, would you do it? I go, absolutely. So I jumped in the helicopter with the pilot and put on the headset, and we were chasing these guys and everybody else around the lake, and because I could see a sled up ahead, and I would know whether it was, Struthers or Davidson or Pake and I remember one time we were right down on the deck, flying right along File, and he was going well over 95 miles an hour. Just and the guy in the helicopter says, man, these things really fly. And, I said, what's more fun, doing this or looking at traffic on I-94? And he goes, what do you think? So that was pretty cool.
Huh. That's the peak of snowmobiling
Yeah,
almost.
I'd say.
When they got helicopter coverage, yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. That is pretty cool. So, Joey, I got a list of just like a very small handful of names because you worked with so many people throughout your race director career, of just all these names that I just.
Oh, it's just talent.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Yeah.
So I just grabbed a handful of names. And if you got a personal story with them or a fun fact of some sorts. So the first one would be Gerald Dyrdahl. But as many stories as you got, we'll take them all about Gerald. Because that's like, we just know of the Gerald Dyrdahl Memorial Race and being close with the Dyrdahls and everything. But like, we just don't know that much about his career. So like, you were with him from 87 all the way up till watching his kids race.
Yeah, Gerald, in those late 80s, and we were just trying to get traction, and he was really good on setup. And he liked those ice races, the oval races. He was really good with, there was a cougar, I think he used to like to race, a Fancool cougar. And he knew how to set it up in corner. But probably the most memorable was Gerald and Brian Sturgeon were on their 90 EXT Specials at Eagle River. I think they ran C class, stock C. And they were leading, and Lanny Benoit came in and drove right over Gerald's skis. And he crashed Gerald. Brian got tied up in it, and Lanny came out okay. And those guys got knocked out of that class, and they were so upset. We were all upset.
Yeah.
And nothing was done to old Lanny. He got away with it. His big red Skidoo, he got away with it. But one of them things that happened.
Jeez. But yeah, I guess I didn't know until Brian told us that he was actually blind in one eye.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Yeah. Who else you got on the list?
Kirk Hibbert. Where did Kirk get his nickname, the Captain?
Mostly because, Kirk was older than all the racers. He was older than Brad and Streg and File and everybody. And so, of course, he was the guy racing out of the race shop at the factory. So, he was considered the captain. And, of course, Captain Kirk from Star Trek. But everybody, they went to him for advice. And what did Kirk think? How should we set him up? What is the suspension settings? Things like that. He was definitely the leader.
Yeah.
If you had to pick someone on the team that had the big C, like on a hockey jersey, Kirk would have been that guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Dan Scallett.
Skittles.
That was his nickname?
That was his nickname.
I wonder why.
Scallett and File were a kind of a team.
Yep.
And 92 and 93 were their numbers. Those two were like this. They always rode together. They'd go to the races together. They worked on their sleds together, and they were almost like brothers.
Yeah.
Him and File.
That's cool. Blair Morgan.
Blair, when he came on the scene, I was actually getting out of being race manager and worked my way over into product management, product manager. So, the first time that we'd seen Blair was out in West Yellowstone, and here was this skinny kid that stood up all the time and just hopped around on that ZR like a bunny rabbit. And, he ran out of Jamie Ansu's camp up in Canada there.
Yep.
And, it's like, wow, this riding style is just totally different.
Yep.
Kirk would sit down on the sled, and how he rode, and here's this kid standing up on it. Of course, later on, Tucker does the same thing. And And then, of course, then you got these unbelievable rivalries between Blair and Tucker, which turned out to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I remember, in an interview, Paik said it was weird seeing Morgan stand up on a sled.
Oh.
Like,
Which is just weird for us because, like, that's what you do when you're at a sled. Like, you're going through bumps, you're going to stand up. And for him to be the first guy to do it, it's just...
Yeah, nobody was standing up.
That's wild.
Until he came.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to look at the evolution of the snowmobile after Blair Morgan. The seats get smaller and smaller and smaller.
And shorter and shorter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in 98, when he was out in West Yellowstone there, we were just like,
What is he doing?
what is he doing? How can he go this fast? And he's, the course is so rough. And he's just, the history was made then.
Mm-hmm.
what about a young Brian Dyrdahl? Like, we're talking 97 Brian Dyrdahl and not the one you know today.
Pretty much a little wild child. But gobs of talent.
Yeah.
And you could tell he was a chip off the Gerald block.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you had Chad and Brian racing, and because he wasn't very big.
No.
He was a small body, and man, he was fast. Of course, then later on when he gets to go race with TNS, Steve's seen the same thing in him that he's seen with Brian Sturgeon. Here's a guy that can really drive,
Yeah.
and know how to give feedback, how to set it up. And so when you put a really good tuner in with a driver, and that's why we really, like right now, Brian races, for Jesse, does all the tuning and that.
Yep.
And, he's pretty darn smart at it, let me tell you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I just hauled a couple loads of rock and sand to Brian just on Thursday. And after I was done hauling, just sat there and just talked snowmobiles with him for about a half hour.
Yeah.
It's just like, if we could just put those conversations with him out on a podcast, it'd be so informative on how he thinks and his thoughts on stuff. What about Greg Spalding? He had a lot to do with Artie Cat.
If you want to hear some of the neatest stories of history of snowmobiles, racing, engine development, Greg Spalding is unbelievable. How he got introduced to snowmobiles as a kid through his dad when they got to be a Skidoo dealer in kind of like the mid 60s. And when he got his hands on his first Skidoo, 66, 67, and he just pulled the motor out and he started grinding on the cylinder right on the bench.
Knew how to do that back in the day.
And his
What the hell?
his dad came into the car dealership that they had back then, and Greg said there was one light over the bench and that motor was sitting there, and his dad just chewed him out. You couldn't even drive it. You had to take it apart and start modifying it. And, yep. And so, he has stories like that, and then how he got into racing, and he was a mechanic for Von Duhamel and all the rest of the oval guys. And then, of course, when he came to Arctic to build engines for us and race engines, if you could spend a whole weekend with him and just listen to the stories, you would just be, it's amazing. It's phenomenal.
In that same category, Mike McCardle.
Yep, Mike, he worked under Greg
Yep.
in the engine group. Of course, he's got a lot of race background with his drag racing. So you take that, and what he knows on engines.
Yeah.
Oh, got quite a team. Yeah.
Yeah, because Mike has been helping us with our ZRT and just the wealth of knowledge that he has on just the old school side of Artie Cat.
Yeah.
It's like you could write a book about that.
Yeah.
We took our 580 when we decided to build up a 580. I just took the motor to Mike and said, just make sure this is a good, durable.
Yeah.
And make sure it's done right. So
Troy Taggart. I know he was kind of coming on towards the end of your race director career, but you probably knew him so well from being around the Thief River area as well.
Well, you know, I knew Troy. You know, he was a field test driver.
Oh, he was.
Yep. And not a lot of field test guys want to be racers. You know, they ride sleds all day long, and they kind of get burnt out of it.
Sure.
You know, it's part of their job. But, you know, you go back in time, Nolan Nakamoose from Polaris was, you know, phenomenal. And he was a Polaris test driver.
Yep. Like Eric Gausen, he's a test rider. From
Eric
Polaris as well.
Gausen, and then, of course, then Troy. So Troy had a passion to go racing, and he had a good friend that was his mechanic. So he'd go out and bust his butt riding snowmobile all day for field tests, and then they'd go work on snowmobiles all night and go racing on the weekends. So you have to have kind of that special drive to do that. And, you know, Troy got to be pretty smart at racing too, because you just can't go out there and drive like a madman.
Yeah.
And that's why he won a 500.
Yep.
Wow.
2001.
Yep.
But to have true passion like that, where you don't get burnt out, like that's the singular thing that you love and care about. Yeah, that's a special person.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Brady told me that with his I-500 winnings in 01, that was he used that money to start his business of Taggart excavating.
Exactly.
So, it's pretty cool. Aaron Iceman Shield. He's kind of the crossover of cross country, oval, snowcross, Le Mans, where we don't really get that nowadays.
Yeah. You don't have much for ice Le Mans anymore, which Aaron was phenomenal at. And then, you know, one year he came up to the Ironman and he wanted to run that because it was such a big race.
Yeah.
And he had actually, on the last day, he was in the lead. And he came off a crossing, and I was out there, and he landed on the side, and it folded the running board with his back of his leg, and his rear end had folded that running board up. He hit it so hard.
Ooh.
And that pretty much, he finished the race, but he was in pain. And he really got all badly bruised. In fact, we had to send him off to a doctor to get it healed up in about, a couple of weeks.
Jeez.
And I remember that because I told Aaron, I said, where you're starting, you're going to be in the front, and you're going to have the fastest racetrack. And he did. He got to the front, and he was gone, because every other sled that goes over the racetrack, as it chews up the snow, they get slower and slower and slower. So he had the best racetrack.
Yeah.
And the day before, he had to start in the back. Now we got to move up to the front because of the inverted start.
Yeah.
And I said, you're in a good spot. I know you're a minute and a half out, but you're going to be in the lead here in about 60 miles.
Yeah.
And he was.
Did it trap his foot as it folded the running board?
I can't remember, but I just know that running board was folded up to the tunnel, and to do that with your rear end.
Yeah.
I think he told that story on the Carbide podcast as well. I can't remember exactly, but
it was.
Well, you guys sent him out to a special doctor and everything.
Yeah, Dr. Jeff Spencer out in California.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He used to work with a lot of motocross guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, he helped Kirk, Aaron, Sturgeon, Hibbert kind of on training. Because back he was, he dealt with Brock Glover and the big motocross guys.
That's pretty neat. That's cool. Have a special doctor for
yeah,
your snowmobile team.
My boss at the time, head of marketing, was a former race manager. His name was Mark Blackwell. He was the head of Articat's marketing. Of course, Mark came from Suzuki. He was a Suzuki racer, Suzuki manager, race manager.
Yep.
So he had all these ties with people like that. So we carried that over and brought that into the snowmobile side.
Sure. He set up a meeting between you and Roger DeCoster, right?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah. We were down at the Metrodome, just like sitting with any of the other kind of our race teams, got visiting with him.
Did he know what snowmobiles were?
Oh, yeah. He knew what snowmobiles were.
Oh, cool.
He really liked the fact that, we had this lot of real estate for our sponsors. But they had a lot of the same similar stories.
Yeah.
And how they developed and racing and all that. So yeah, that was fun visiting with him.
Yeah. No, I thought that was a cool add-on. Earl Reimer.
You know, he was out of that Canadian camp too.
Sure.
Man, he was a hard charger. Tough as nails.
Really?
You know, just, you know, strong, kind of, you know, could really ride the daylights out of it. 100, he could fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just manhandle the sled.
Yeah.
Yeah, that 100 looked pretty cool on
Yeah.
like those 01 ZRs.
Always fun to be around. Yeah, he was always so positive.
Dan and Ed DeVault, the oval scene.
Yeah, I tell you, the DeVault family they were special. Their dad was Charlie, just a sweetheart of a guy, really devoted to the boys and their racing, and they were smart at it. They knew how to set up sleds, and they were pretty darn strong, especially in that DC B stock group.
Yeah.
They were really good at that. And those boys were they were gentlemen. And, you know, miss them guys. They were fun. They never called and, you know, help us set up the sled or do this or that. They just knew what to do.
Sure.
And so whenever when I'd go to the races, especially at Eagle River, I'd go over to their trailer, and it was always to go get chili or whatever.
Like, oh, you guys got it covered.
Yeah, they had it covered. And they were always just, they wanted to BS, you know. And,
Sure.
but they knew what to do. And they were competitive.
Tucker Hibbert. I know he was right at a kid as you were at the tail end of your race director career, but you had to have dealt with him a little bit, maybe with Kirk, or
yeah. You know, the biggest thing was there was a couple stories. Tucker wanted to race at Pine Lake one year, but it was on the little track.
Oh, sure.
So Kirk picked up a 340 Puma AWS, and Kirk didn't have time to work on it. So John Sandberg was up in Thief River, and we took the sled and we put some studs in it, and we put some carbides on it, and kind of lowered it down a little bit. And we brought it to Pine Lake so Tucker could go around when they had the little oval for the kids.
Yeah.
And he did really well. And, you know, and God, he must have been, I don't know, 11, 12.
Yeah.
Who knows? But then it wasn't long after that, Kirk came to me and said, you know, Tucker really wants to go race, and you got an idea of how we can do it? Because, you know, I'm racing full time, and he was working in engineering too. And so File and Scallop were getting to the end of their race career, and they were working with Russ Ebert.
Oh, sure.
So I asked Russ, would you be willing to take Tucker and go run juniors? And he said, absolutely. Kirk said he'd let him use his one trailer. And basically, Tucker raced under Russ Ebert. And I think history was pretty much made then, especially when he won that first X Games at age 15. I mean,
That's history in the making.
yeah. And that was really cool. After he won that, the high school in Thief River Falls had a deal where they recognized all the students, whether they were speech, acting, singing, athletics, whatever. And the auditorium was full. And Mark Blackwell and I went there because they were going to honor Tucker. And he was the last one to be on the schedule. Of course, they played the video of the X Games.
Wow.
And Tucker, he was 15 years old, and he spoke phenomenal. Just excellent. And the whole place was like, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Because, you know, up on the big screen is the actual TV coverage.
Yeah.
You know, and for Tucker to win that, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. At 15 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
and you're going to school with this kid, and you're watching the X Games TV coverage. It's like I see this kid every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15. What are you, ninth grade? 10? I don't know.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah,
this other kid here is worrying about his math test.
yeah. This kid's launching a snowmobile for the X Games.
Yeah.
Freaking nuts.
So, yeah, there was, and the list goes on and on. There was a lot of really,
Yeah, like that was just the top handful of names
Yep.
I pulled,
Yeah.
like from 87 all the way to 99. It's an endless list.
yeah, we had a good array of oval guys, cross country. Because, when we started out in cross country, when Kirk started racing there in the late 80s, I mean, we'd go to a race, there'd be 40 Polaris's and one Arctic Cat.
Yeah.
Gosh.
But then as we started coming with the ZRs, pretty soon it started to level out. And so we had a good crew. And then, of course, snowcross started coming in, and there was some hill climb and drag racers. And we pretty much dabbled in all of it.
Yeah. What about those like special edition ZRs with like the orange hoods or the purple hoods, or I think there's a white one?
We just, at the race shop there, we'd get some hoods out of production, and I can't remember who we had paint them.
Chuck. Was it a Chuck?
It was before the orange rule was implemented. So like Brian's Sturgeon's A-Stalker, which was a ZR700, that was orange. And he never lost a race with that.
Really?
Not one. Kirk had a purple hood.
Yep.
I think Brad had that pearl white one time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we dabbled in that a little
Yeah.
bit.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just so if you see a few of those in one-off pictures
Yeah.
of somebody's on a different color sled.
Yeah, that was just to, create some excitement and
Just to have a little more fun.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you gotta switch it up every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh,
Another neat story too was the race pullovers, the jackets that the racers wore. I see that in this picture here.
Yep.
That all came about because Kirk Hibbert's wife, Teresa, made him a race pullover when he won the 90 race.
Oh, really?
One for him and one for Rex. We took that jacket and gave it to Arctic Wear that summer and said, we need these. And so after that, there was always the race pullovers.
Really?
Well, that's neat for his wife.
Yeah, Teresa did a fabulous job. So so that's where that came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool. From 1990.
Yep.
You got any other names you could think of, Kyle?
Yeah. Who's this
I
Chuck
was-
guy?
Oh, Chuck. Chuck is the paint rep. He's from Thief River, and he said he back in the day.
Oh, Chuck Hord.
Yep.
There you go.
Chuck
Yep.
Hord.
Yep.
Yeah, he did a lot of painting for Arctic Cat back in the day.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah, he comes around every Thursday.
Yeah.
Talk to him. Yeah. Talk about sleds. And,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's a good guy. But, yeah, no.
But what about like some of the, or sorry, Kyle, I'll cut you off there.
Jesse.
Oh, yeah, Jesse Strag.
No.
Oh, that Jesse.
Hallstrom. What are we going to see? We're going to see a 500 victory coming up.
What were your thoughts, Joey? Like Jesse jumped up into the pro class with us these last two NATO Wash rounds, and he had a hell of a performance at Pine Lake with the fastest lap of the race in pro class. Did you think he was going to win coming into NATO Wash? I mean, being the dad, you always got to have high expectations for your son, but
Oh, I knew we had a good shot.
yeah.
Introduced the kids to snowmobiles when they were young, and we had a lot of fun racing those 120s and 206s, and when we had the opportunity to team up with Brian Dyrdahl, and I knew we'd have a good shot.
Yeah.
Especially doing so well at Pine Lake, and then he had his heart set on, I want to run that back row in the pro, and I'm like, well, you just won the semi-pro. No, I want to run that back row. So when we were looking at the times, going, whoa, if we could have started in the front row, we probably would have had a good shot at this. So,
Yeah.
and then the winter being so disastrous with not enough ice and no snow and the warm temps, and But thank goodness we pulled off those 2 races at Natowash on the ice.
Oh yeah.
And the sled that Brian had set up for Jesse, and they tested some with it, and they never really. I don't think they changed it from Pine Lake. They just took it to Natowash, and it really worked good. And, it was fun. The funnest part about it was Brad Paik was there, Jeremy File was there, and here's some of the guys that were the best lake racers that I knew. And File going, he goes, I got to take my hat off. That was phenomenal. He said, I couldn't believe that. And so when you get that from those guys, Jeremy winning 1 or 2 Pine Lakes, and Brad, and I mean, those guys knew how to go around the ice. And so kind of, puts him in the same category and same group with them guys. So,
Oh yeah.
it's fun. It's exciting.
Yeah. I'm coming for you this year, Jesse.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're looking forward to it. I hope we have a normal winter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Totally.
For sure.
Yeah.
Talking about this bad winter we had though, and you worked so long at Articat. Articat's kind of going through some things right now with some layoffs and lack of just kind of production right now. What's your opinions on that? That's kind of the current state of being talked about being bought out again. What's your thoughts on that, Joey?
Well, I remember when we went through it in '81 when Articat shut the doors. And that was just devastating. And now we're coming off a winter just as bad.
Yeah.
And now, I don't see them closing the doors or any of that, but things are going to have to tighten up. Again, we got to have some snow. We got to have some cold weather, which I think we will. Especially now when you see the weather and patterns have changed.
Yeah.
So, I think snowmobiling is still, in the minds of a lot of people. They want to ride. Whenever we get snow, people really, they want to go do it. It's fun.
Yeah. People perk up.
Yeah. And so hopefully that happens. And we've been through this before.
Yeah.
It was pretty dismal, 81, 82, 83, 84, even in 85. It took a while.
Yeah.
So it might not come roaring back right away, but you get a couple good winners, and it'll be pretty nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, with the winter we just had, I think every manufacturer is going to have to kind of maybe pull the strings back a little bit on the racing.
Oh, definitely. Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it'll be an interesting year coming up for sure on to see how budgets are worked out and everything.
But you get a foot or two of fresh snow, and
Oh, yeah.
people get pretty excited.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, you get snow or in early December, you don't have enough sleds to sell then. But 2012 inducted to the Hall of Fame. That had been pretty cool.
That was real cool. I was there and watched the first one in 1988, and then seeing my heroes go in there, and I was just like, wow, this is neat. And so then when I got the call there right before I got inducted in 12 that I'd been selected, I'm like, wow. And it wasn't because of my actual racing. It was what I did as a race manager. And how we rebuilt the team and the brand and some of the races. And, when it's in your passion, it's in your blood, it seems like it comes easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. No, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, to figure out that, you probably didn't think you were so vital to the snowmobiling community, but to be inducted and like, oh wow, I must have been kind of a main cog in the wheel. Like that's got to be pretty special to figure out.
It was. It was a pretty special night. Jesse slept through most of it.
Nice.
I think he would have been 6 years old. So as it got long into the evening there, Gabby stayed awake, but
Yeah.
it was special.
Yeah.
It's something I'll always remember. And pretty proud of it.
Totally.
you know, and now some of the other guys that are getting in it, it's exciting to see for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of them are your old riders that used to race for you. And do you see in this era, or like these years of racing, future Hall of Famers? Can you name any of them?
Oh, definitely. You know, Herfindahl's had a
Yeah.
pretty phenomenal run. You know, you're going to see, you know, a fair amount of them. You know, you look at Elias in the snowcross world.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some of the gals.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
There are some really good female racers out there over the years that need to be recognized. So yeah, it's, we just last night at the stock car races ran into Scott Schuster, who's on the board, and I said, you know, have we heard when the next round is going to be announced? So it'd be kind of exciting to see who gets on there.
Yeah.
Sure.
But like to see Justin Tate in there, but he's still racing.
Yeah.
He kind of said he was going to retire like these last 3 years,
Yeah.
so he just keeps going.
No, it's always fun to see him out there. I love watching him.
What about we've talked about this a few times, Joey, like the Mount Rushmore of cross country racing. It's kind of like my personal one would be Kirk, because of his Pine Lake wins, the I-500 wins, just being so innovative at everything. Brian Dyrdahl, Herf. But then the number 4, there's a lot of people I would put at number 4, like it'd be Paik or Todd Wolfe or even Aaron Christensen now with this last I-500 victory they had over me. But like there's a hand, or even Brian Dick. Brian Dick would be a
Ryan Dick, Corey Davidson.
You know, Struthers was pretty big.
yeah. Well, like that's my 3, but then that 4th, it's hard to nail down a 4th, because then you kind of got to go 4, 5, 6. There's so many others to add in there.
You know, Tony Heikkinen too. I mean, you know, when he first came and with the Carpex, really, you know,
Yeah.
they seen a lot in him, so that's why they jumped on that 1W.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's too many names to add to it.
Yeah.
But, well, I don't know. You got anything else for Joey, Kyle, or Brody, or?
It's fun watching, listening to these. I mean, it's kinda, you know, this is kind of the new way
Yeah.
Yeah.
to talk about this. Where in the past there'd be interviews in magazines and that, but yeah, keep up the good work. It's interesting.
Yeah. I know when
Get the variety of different people and racers and industry people, and
when we had Jesse come down here last fall and do one of our first ones, I think the first 10 we did, and he said you'd be interested in doing one, and I always kept that in the back of my mind, is like, okay, we got to do one with Joey. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But no,
no, it's fun reminiscing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of. I was fortunate to. You know, we came from basically nothing. Especially when Arctic had shut the doors, and the company got back going. So we had everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was fun. It was exciting. There was a lot of hard work. But wouldn't have traded it for the world.
Yeah. And to be, like to have the 90s to be like the peak of snowmobiling too. Like that saying is, you don't know you're in the good old days until you're out of them.
No.
Like, I'm sure that kind of rings true with the 90s of snowmobiling.
And
yeah, you know, and it wasn't a job. It was like Roger Skyme says, it was our way of life. I mean, you know, we were going to the races every weekend, and if we weren't doing that, we were testing, or we were always involved in it. We were, you know, I mean, I think there was 3 years there we looked back and we traveled 37 out of 52 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So we were on the road a lot.
Yeah.
And shows for Firecat or photo shoots or whatever. I mean, it was our passion.
Yeah.
And wouldn't have traded it for the world.
No. Heck
Well, yeah, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate you coming down here, Joey.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it.
Yeah, great.
Well, you guys keep up the good work. It's fun.
I'm sure we barely scratched the surface on the, on the
Yeah,
90.
we say it every time we have someone really cool in here. It's like we could bring you back 4 or 5 more times and still not get every story out there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But no, we appreciate it and hope everybody else did. So,
oh yeah, I think so. This is a really good episode.
Yeah,
thank you
for
very
sure.
much.
Thank you.
all right, well, we'll see you. Oh, probably not next week. Next week might be off. So
Yeah,
maybe not, but
yeah, you're still thinking about it.
We're going racing.
Oh,
Maybe.
are you?
you are too?
It's up in the air.
Oh, okay.
I was
Okay.
thinking about it in the air.
Okay, sure.
It's up in the air.
Okay. Well, we'll see you next time. So
Yep.
thanks again, everybody.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank
See ya.
you guys.